Do you actually think that this is going to go on another 60, 70, 80 years? I don't. I'd rather see the solution be done peacefully rather than violently. But the fact of the matter is it's not going to be done that way because no nation on earth has been forged as a result of peace. Every nation on earth has been forged through war and through bloodshed. That's the horrible truth in reality. The Israelis had a botched raid. The peaceniks were not peaceniks, they were provocateurs. They wanted this to happen and they won. Very intelligent American leftists orchestrated this from the beginning in order to make sure the Israelis fell into the trap, and they did. It proves the Israelis are no longer the vaunted military they once were. It proves the Mossad doesn't have the intelligence it should have. It proves many things, and it's a whole new ballgame, as they say in San Francisco. Were their soldiers dangled like bait in a shark tank? Why would you dangle a commando one at a time into a group of ultra-nationalists who hate your guts and want you dead? What do you expect them to do? Did you expect that the Palestinians and the Turks and the American fanatics were not going to use clubs and knives? What were they thinking? Why didn't they just disable the propellers of the ships and tow them into port? I'm still asking the same question. So one caller said, well, they couldn't do it because you have to know what's on the ship before you disable it. I don't buy that at all. The Israelis did not think this through. No matter what theory you accept, it was wrong from the beginning to the end because there are 9 people who were dead. Period. End of story. And the Israeli military looks weak. And it looks like this was orchestrated from Washington. And there's many things that came up here that need to be talked about. But I made one main point, and I'll repeat it again, even though it's controversial. And I didn't do it just to shock you. I'll say it again. I actually believe that the Palestinians and Turks on board that ship actually showed restraint given the intense nature of this situation. That is absolutely right. Would you expect ultra-nationalists not to defend themselves if they were attacked by a foreign military? Now, the fact of the matter is, you have to look at this through different eyes. In 1947, the Jews tried to break a British blockade into the port of Haifa, I believe. A ship filled with Jewish immigrants was trying to get into Israel. It was stopped by the British. The British actually opened fire on them, and 2 Jews were killed. But let's turn back to 1947. What if the British had, instead of firing on them, had gone with helicopters? I don't know if helicopters existed militarily at that time. But let us say British commandos were put onto that ship with the Haganah and the Argun on those ships. The tough Jews who believed in the founding of Israel. Do you think that they wouldn't have killed the British commandos? They would have stripped them naked, taken their guns, shot them, and thrown them overboard. I mean, be real about it, will you please? I mean, let's stop already with the gefilte fish view of the world. Please remove the matzah from your lenses. So if you look at it that way, you understand what I'm saying to you. Dead is dead, and it can't go on. And the Israelis fell into the trap because they were weakened by subsequent administrations here, not just Obama. It didn't start with Obama. It started way before Obama. You go back to Gulf War. What did Israel do during Gulf War I? Don't you remember Bush 1? They stood there and they waited. They did nothing. They sat with gas masks in a shelter. We were shocked. For years we were sold a bill of goods. They're our best ally in the Middle East. Remember that lie? The Israelis are our best ally in the Middle East. They protect the oil lanes. So when war came in Gulf War, they were told not to fire a shot. And we had to put missile defense shields, or whatever they were, the mobile missile defense shields in Israel, so they could hide in the bomb shelters. It's not that they weren't able to join us in the fight. They were told not to by Bush 1. So they've been neutralized for a long time now. We're going back a long time. The Israelis have been neutralized by subsequent American administrations. This didn't begin with Obama. It began with the Bilderbergs. It began, you want to go into the whole picture, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergs? You think I'm not aware of all of the New World Order, one world government who was running this whole show? To them, Israel is a fly in the ointment. They do not want any nationalism anywhere on the earth, and they'd rather start with the weak nationalisms rather than the strong ones. That's why they're silent on Muslim extremism, but very vocal on Christians and Jews. They figure they'll take their soft targets first. So they don't want any sovereignty. That's why they've erased our border with Mexico. That's why they put one new world order globalist in power, one after the other, whether it was Bush, who also did nothing to defend the borders, and now Obama doing nothing to defend the borders. The people are screaming, we want Arizona laws in our states. They're tired of the illegal aliens sucking their services dry and committing crimes. They're tired of it. But the globalists want a North American Union, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, God forbid one nation. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a greater Frankenstein than that? Adopting Mexico into one nation, can you imagine? If you think that Greece pulled down the EU, you are right. But Greece pulling down the EU is nothing compared with what will happen if these globalists are not stopped in their tracks in their attempts to make Mexico, the United States, and Canada one. But that's a second story. Let's focus on the news at hand. The news story that everyone's talking about is not so much that God rained on Obama's insincere testimonial to our troops by disrespecting them, by not being at Arlington, by not being at the Gold Star dinner. He did not go to Arlington, and he was the first president not to go to Arlington during the time of two wars. That's right, I stand by my word. Yes, some other presidents were not in attendance at times. For example, Bush was in Normandy, so they say, oh, he wasn't there. This one wasn't in Normandy. He was at a barbecue across from Farrakhan's house. So don't give me the double talk. I know how the leftists lie. They have double tongues. He was not in Normandy. This one was at a barbecue across from Farrakhan. You'll put two and two together on that one, what he was doing there. God only knows. But anyway, we have two wars, and he wasn't at Arlington. So he goes and gives a speech somewhere. He's supposed to at another cemetery in Illinois, and God rains it out. God rains down on him. You want to talk about pregnant with symbolism. Wow, you want to talk about symbolism? Thunder and lightning. Oh, play the speech of him breaking. He couldn't even give a speech. Play it. Go ahead.
A little bit of rain doesn't hurt anybody, but we don't want anybody being struck by lightning, all right? God bless you, everybody.
So they sent him home. Sent him home. They got tickets to the next one. And old Biden gave the speech in Washington, stunned by it. Stunned that he was actually called upon to give the speech at Arlington. Of course he was stunned. He never thought he'd see the day that the president wouldn't be at Arlington at a time of two wars and an escalating war in Afghanistan. Stunned. The longest war in American history, and Obama's not there, the commander-in-chief. No one even knows why we're nobody knows why we're in Afghanistan. Nobody. I've asked, I'm not going to tell you who. I will not name my sources because I don't have any. I speak to people who are in the military from time to time who I run into, let's put it to you that way, some of whom are active duty. And they say we don't know what our mission is. We don't know why we're in Afghanistan. Nobody knows it. But the body bags keep coming home, and people come home without limbs and arms, eyes, legs, feet. They don't know why they're there. No one knows why they're there. Who's pulling the show? Why are we there? Why are we there? And what exactly were the peace fanatics trying to do by bringing the ships in? Well, they achieved everything they wanted. They now have the martyrs. Oh, do they have the martyrs? The Israelis couldn't see this coming? They couldn't see the softball coming at them from 100 miles away, that there was going to be a disaster on their hands? They couldn't see this? How could they not see this? The vaunted Israeli Mossad didn't see this. I believe that either their soldiers were dangled like bait from the helicopters, hoping that they'd be butchered, so they could hold them up and say, oh, look what they did to our poor boys. Or some moron ran this military campaign, disaster from the top to the bottom. You could say it was Ehud Barak. You could say it was one of our quisling American generals who is now building up a Palestinian army, giving them weapons and training and special forces training so they can kill more Jews. One of our quisling generals is over there teaching them how to kill Jews. I don't understand the world anymore. I don't know what side the country that I live in is on. You tell me the issue, I don't know what side we're on anymore. But I know this. Every nation has a right to defend its borders, and every nation has a right to its own sovereignty. The Israelis were protecting theirs. The Palestinians want to create their nation. And so there's a war going on. So if there's a war going on, you figure your enemy is clever, and they're going to use every trick in the book. And that includes public relations. Now, let's talk about public relations. The nation with the worst public relations in the history of the world is Israel. I've never saw anything like this. The worst PR in the universe. That's one thing. But for them to fall into this trap is another. How did they fall into a trap like this? Why did they conduct this raid in international waters rather than in their own territorial waters, which is now, by conducting the raid in international waters, they're now seen as a terrorist nation by the enemies of truth. Okay, but they now have a fact in international law to use. How did the Israelis fall into this trap? Who said go after them in international waters? Let's start with the basics. Let's put all the other stuff aside. It's after the game now. We're talking about the ball game. You want to talk about it like that? Go ahead. But dead is dead, as my mother taught me. There's no coming back for those who are dead. The Turks who were killed, they're dead. They're gone. That's why I played the prayer for the dead, because you must respect the dead. That's all there is to it. And you must not call for more bloodshed. You must not call for more hatred and bloodshed. You must not. You must stop. You must go to the best part of your own religion to save yourself and save the world. There's no other way. Each man must find within himself the peace and the love within himself. And I'm not saying this just for lip service. Each man must find the peace and the love within himself to save the world. Just think what would happen if 6 billion people found peace and love within themselves. I know it sounds a little, new agey. I can't help that. Maybe I've changed. Maybe I've seen things change in my own life to an extent that I never thought I'd see. And maybe I've seen the country taken over by a group of fanatics, B-grade fanatics, like a bad movie. And I believe the only salvation is to turn within and ask God's forgiveness.